I look at the more or less the sacrifice of Jesus Christ for our sins so that we may have everlasting life. I look at it as, number one, a gift that I don't even know if we deserve. But number two, a logistical manner in which to augment this reality. The reason that I say that is because if you look at the other side, everything is about symbols and geometry. It's about energy. It's about sacrifice. And it seems to repeat itself.
Yep.
To me, it seems that that is the way that they have discerned they can alter this reality. Yep. Right. So when it comes to like you're saying, there's a puppeteering or there's a facade over base reality. It's like, yeah. And the only way that facade works is like it has to have multiple tethering points to reality. So it's like, imagine putting on a mask, but it's got no backstrap. And the mask just slides off your face, right? Yeah. But if you can take multiple points of crazy glue on the inside of the mask and put it on, it will stay. Those multiple points of crazy glue is like, I don't know, let's say pulling this after we enter the Chinese New Year of the serpent. Mm-hmm. If you can do this at that time, well, that might be one little tack there. If you can maybe pay homage to Caesar in some way, shape, or form. You know what also is worth mentioning here is that the very first Caesar of Rome, I forget what the terminology is, it's escaping me right now, but he ushered in what historians now look to, and also what he said it was, a golden age.
Oh boy.
Which is the language that Donald Trump has been using ad nauseum to describe his administration. It's also worth noting that Alice Bailey and Helena Blavatsky, who are basically like old school occultists. They're no longer with us, but these people wrote a lot of the books. It was really Alice Bailey was studying Helena Blavatsky, but these people really fleshed out the roadmap for Gnostics and New Age people. And they believed that in 2025, we would be entering a golden age.
Really?
The age of Aquarius. They used the language golden age. So another connective piece to Caesar.
Right.
And so I think that's how you do it. It's like, you can't just hatch a master plan. You look at like a 9/11 and it's like, honestly, the fact that it happened at all is a miracle, because I'm trying to set up like live events and it's very difficult to set up a live event, dude. And the fact that these people are orchestrating things on a world stage is kind of insane.
You need the CIA money to be able to put it together.
Right. But even still, it's like we look at the government and we go, how faulty is the government? How inept is the government? Right. And it's like, there is some section within the government that's not at all inept, and they know the ways in which to manipulate this reality. Right. And I think you need those connective points. It needs to connect to this astrological moment. It needs to connect to this new year, this numerological date, right? On the anniversary of XYZ, you name it. The more points of connectivity you can have, the likelihood of it being executed goes up. And so I think when it came to Jesus Christ, I think it's like, they're doing the same thing. They're sacrificing to change things, but we got the ultimate sacrifice on our side.
Well,
and it wasn't just like because I've heard people go like, why would God do such a thing? It's like, well, he made this realm and he understands how to augment it or how to change it.
Kanye, one of his tweets in this infamous few days of tweets, he said how they killed Michael Jordan's dad on Father's Day.
Yep.
And they killed his mom after he put out Graduation. And he also talked about Kobe dying, which I always thought, even as it happened, this is pre-COVID taking over the world, was like a sacrifice. Yeah. It was like the beginning of something bad. Like it just felt horrible.
Well, I mean, look at this event that just took place, right? We had a plane depart from Kansas, and it nosedives in spectacular fashion. And people are still speculating as to whether or not it was a missile. It nosedives in Philadelphia. Well, who's playing in this Super Bowl? The Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles.
Right.
And so once again, it's like, is that coincidence? No, somebody understands how to manipulate this reality. So going back to this situation, it's like we talked about that Hegelian dialectic, right? This idea of like problem, reaction, solution. But more accurately, it's probably described as order out of chaos. So if we were to get, real speculative here, the idea that like Netanyahu would oversee the assassination of Donald Trump, giving us another 9/11 type of an event, which in many ways it almost feels like we're overdue. And it's interesting because people will speculate. I won't get into that here because it's just a whole other rabbit trail. But Israel's involvement in 9/11 and whether or not that was what we were perceiving it as. It's almost certainly not what we were perceiving it as. But did Israel play a role in it? And then there's this beautiful bit of poetry where all of a sudden it happens again. Now, if the story is any good, somehow Donald Trump survives this, and we get this big revelatory moment of the government of Israel's involvement in American politics, not only being disproportionate, but being massively detrimental and horrifying to a scale that we couldn't really imagine before.
Right.
So the reason that I even speculate that could happen is because Donald Trump finds himself at the center of the most compelling conspiracy theories that I've ever seen. I mean, full stop. There's not a character on Earth, not even Elon, brushes up against the strange happenings surrounding Donald Trump's life. I mean, I've been on this show before. We've talked about the idea of the Ingersoll Lockwood books, right? Or the idea that, and just for the audience sake, the Ingersoll Lockwood books are a series of books that came out in the late 1800s. There were two of them. One of them was called The Marvelous Underground Adventures of Baron Trump, Little Baron Trump, and it's narrated by Little Baron Trump's mentor, the Don. And then there is 1900 or The Last President, which is a really fascinating title to be using when you put it up in contrast to Donald Trump's current administration. It almost feels like they're telling us that there's something going on here.
I'll add to that Donald J. Trump's uncle, John Trump, the J in Donald J. Trump is taken from John Trump. He was in charge, and everyone who's listening has heard me say this before, but I'll say it again. He's the guy.
Best, dude. Please say it again.
He collected all of Nikola Tesla's stuff, after he died. That's fascinating to me.
Yes, and why is that fascinating? Because Nikola Tesla is highly speculated to have figured out time travel. There's really weird quotes from Nikola Tesla where he's sitting under his pylons and he's claiming that he can see the past, present, and future all from where he's sitting.
Right.
John Trump's findings that he reports back to the FBI on Nikola's technology and everything is made, but he says there's nothing worth noting here, which is really unlikely.
Sure. I totally believe that.
Yes. And look, this isn't something that I'm well versed on, but I have seen it enough to know that there is meat on the bone when it comes to the films Back to the Future and how they constantly hint at Donald Trump and his presidency, as well as 9/11, which plays a huge part in the story of Donald Trump, too, in a way that it eludes me. There's a lot of other people that have a great handle on it. And when I see the information that they present, I go, that is uncanny.
Interesting.
So you have this time travel element in the Ingersoll Lockwood books, in the John Trump cleaning up Nikola Tesla's inventions, in the Back to the Future movies, where Biff himself, Biff Don is a excellent account on X. I highly recommend going and finding Biff Don, and he does fantastic dives on this. But Biff was modeled after Donald Trump. This is something that they admit. And so there is a never-ending supply of time travel threads to pull on with Donald Trump. And he's the central, almost messianic figure of the QAnon conspiracy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, imagine being a cultural icon for decades. It's only to ascend into the presidency at a time where all these conspiracy theories are now being revealed as truth. Yes. And you're like, even though you're kind of establishment, wealthy New York politician, you're still an outsider, allegedly. There's theories against that. But whatever's happening, there appears to be a war against him, or at least the people who support him.
I almost think he's like a so you have like the 13 tribes, and then this seems to be like this number 13 pops up everywhere, and there's the 13 royal bloodlines of like the Illuminati. And I've heard it speculated quite convincingly that he is of a breakaway family bloodline of the Illuminati. Interestingly enough, the Illuminati springs forth out of Bavaria, and if you trace back Donald Trump's lineage, they come from Bavaria. So I don't know. It's like what we do here.
This is it.
Is we just spiral into madness. I mean, I'm comfortable doing it. I know from the outside looking in, I look like an insane person that's just twirling on a street corner. But all of these things, they connect in such it's just the odds are against it being coincidence. At some point, when you have a body of anecdotal idiosyncrasies, you have to step back and go, why is that pile so big?
Right.
How in a world of random events could that pile ever get that big? Right. It's so incredibly unlikely. And so that is the reason that I said if this movie was any good, he would survive this attack and he would expose Israel's hand in this. And I think among other things, we kind of have a lot of pieces on the table right now. We have like the Epstein Diddy thing that we never got closure for.
Yep.
And we have the with that goes all the child trafficking horrors. Yep. That what's interesting to note here is within Trump's first administration, there were a lot of pedophile ring busts that were disjointed. In other words, the media never said they were part of a concerted effort. These were things that went underreported. You can find articles about them. Yep. Nobody drew a correlation, and certainly nobody in the media championed him for doing these things.
On that, I mean, so we know that our former border czar, Kamala Harris, 300,000 kids went missing over the border. The Super Bowl is allegedly one of the most rampant places for child trafficking.
I've heard that, yeah.
And I don't know that for sure, but I have seen that reported on. And then what you're saying, it kind of intersects with the whole Q world where Q was saying Trump was a part of breaking apart the child trafficking, human trafficking stuff. I didn't follow Q that much. I had a friend who did, and they were ragging on him so hard. And he was talking about the child trafficking stuff that was 4 or 5 years ago. And then I'm seeing in the news, local news articles from like Georgia, tractor trailer pulled over, 100 kids saved. I'm like, you guys realize that's 100 children in a tractor trailer like slaves in the back of this thing that just got saved. That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah. That's insane. Something is happening. They do this all the time.
Well, we've gotten to the point now where I don't think we can dismiss that, right? We had Epstein. Epstein went viral. Everybody was spreading the meme. Epstein didn't kill himself. Yep. I don't think Epstein is dead. I suspect that he's not dead. What's worth mentioning about Epstein too is allegedly his penis looked like an egg, and that's not even a joke.
I know. I saw
a detail that is part of this story.
Yes.
The only connective tissue I can find.
Connective tissue? Did you have to?
This dude's serpent looked like an egg, right? Yep. Right. This guy was carrying around an Orphic egg in his pants. So, I think that. And I've told this to Clint Russell. We do a show together called Dangerous, RTRD, Real Talk, Real Dudes. But it's really just an acronym for retards. And so that we can name our show Dangerous Retards. But when we approach sponsors, we can say the name of the show is Dangerous.
Nice.
So I have told him several times that I think what we're going to see is an unbelievable vindication train for Donald Trump. This is a man who wrote The Art of the Comeback and then made one of the greatest comebacks that we've ever seen.
For sure.
Obviously, he's a time traveler. Obviously, his uncle did this and that. But what we watched, because earlier I said that there was a mass of unthinking lemmings that for the past 10 years have been deciding much of the direction of the country.
Yeah.
And
more.
If you seek to control everything, you have to then tango with the underbelly of critical thinkers. And if you were at all a critical thinker, you could have easily looked at his first term and seen all of the ways in which they sought to sabotage him, levying one charge or another against him. Ultimately, they are paper thin and they fall apart, but the stain is still there in the public eye, right? It's like, it doesn't matter that the woman who accused him of sexually assaulting her ended up being completely out of her mind because the allegation still happened. And that was ammunition for the unthinking masses. But the critical thinkers on the underbelly took note. This man is being unfairly persecuted, right? He's they try to impeach him. They accuse him of things that they themselves are doing.
Of course.
And then we get the Biden administration. So we had a real nice economy and things were going pretty good. He was pretty handcuffed. He couldn't do X, Y, and Z, but things were pretty good. Then we got a corpse. We got Dana Carvey in a rubber mask pretending to be Joe Biden and nosediving our country into the dirt, much like a plane in Philadelphia.
May I say maybe even a Humpty Dumpty?
You could say, right? So we have this thing that is engineered to make us yearn for the return of a dude like, if only somehow this guy could make a triumphant comeback, it would be spectacular. And sure enough, he does. And so my line of thinking for years now has been, and I've been telling, because my number one confidant is my wife. I tell her every schizo thought that I have. And she has been subjected to me saying 100% Donald Trump will be back in the presidency since the moment he left office. Right. I've been calling it and calling it and calling it all through the lens of good theater.
Right.
And so we finally get to this point. Now, if this theater is going to continue to be good, and if you really are going to get this ultimate order out of chaos moment where something horrifying happens at the Super Bowl or horrifying happens in the near future, and they use it to justify this wild excursion into another country or this removal of rights on a large scale that we haven't seen since like the Patriot Act or, 5 years ago, then a couple of more things would need to happen. Now, I've speculated heavily as to whether or not he's the Antichrist. And I know that sounds obtuse, but it's not. There's so many strange things with him. It's simply not obtuse. I don't believe that he is, but I know that there are ways in which he is. Like, I have this coin here, this commemorative coin. I don't know if you guys can see it. Probably not. But either way, it's Donald Trump's face next to the King Cyrus. And this is a coin that's commissioned by a group of rabbinic Jews, I believe, in Israel. And there are very many people in Israel who believe he is the Moshiach, right? So the Jews don't believe that Christ was the Messiah. Yep. They believe that their Messiah is still yet to come. And a lot of people are gearing up for it to be Donald Trump. There's a wonderful song by the Israeli boys choir called Super Trump. If you listen to it, you realize they've really lionized this guy. They gave him I forgot what the name of the silver crown was, but he was gifted a crown by a group of rabbinic Jews. There was even a guy probably in 2018 or something like that, that was in Israel that was working tirelessly to connect Donald Trump's genealogy to the biblical King David, right? Wow. This is something that they really love him over there, which is why I always was kind of like, I don't understand why everybody is anti-Israel's involvement in our government and then celebrating when Donald Trump is in the presidency. I'm like, have you not been paying attention? But whatever. Right. So if this theater was to go well, there's a couple other pieces that would need to go in place, right? I said that I suspected he is an Antichrist figure. People say, well, the Antichrist is supposed to be beloved. And I say, give it some time. Give it some time and this guy will be beloved. And you know what will make him beloved? If this dude really does crack open the Diddy Epstein situation again and expose that some dark element within our government, maybe like a deep state, is sacrificing children and trafficking them to the elites in Hollywood and in politics. If he pulled the curtain back on that, that would be the people's champion.
It seems like we're on the edge of this type of revelation in multiple ways. He just signed the executive order to release the JFK papers, which there's lots of people who believe Israel is involved in that assassination attempt. There's so many different ways to look at that assassination, which you could then connect those dots to what we're talking about now with Trump, Caesar, all these things.
And Gaza too.
Gaza, that's right. That's right.
The most important.
That's also on the table. And then in terms of disclosure, this week coming up, supposedly, Rep. Anna Paulina Luna is going to have a press conference where she's going to say, she said it's going to change the way Americans view the country. And I believe it has something to do with disclosure because she's been on that committee, the UAP committee, and she's talked about interdimensional beings, that she believes them. So it's like something is percolating.